Hello there and welcome back. This is Brian King. I'm an adult with Asperger's, ADHD, dyslexia, and a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I'm also the very proud father of 3 boys, all of whom have Asperger's and ADHD. And I'm here to teach you how you can have your challenges, whatever they are, and succeed anyway. But before we dive into today's conversation, let me take a minute to introduce you to our sponsors. The first one is MicroShare International. They happen to be the marketing company that I use, and the reason I've chosen them is because they are really ahead of the curve. They have the most cutting-edge strategies, cutting-edge technology, so that you can do the very best for the people that you serve. You can find them online at microshareintl.com. Our other sponsor is the American Club Association. What this club is a group of professionals who got together to make networking what it should be. These people are unique in that they believe that networking isn't about seeing what others can do for you. It's about seeing how you can do things for each other so that you both succeed and you both grow. You can learn more about them online at acanetwork.org. And you can also find links to these sponsors at my website, succeedwithadhdanyway.com. So let's jump in. Let me start by saying this, and you may have the same experience. I really hate flying. I realize it's a necessary evil when I get asked to speak out of state and sometimes out of the country. And between the bright lights, the echoing, the overhead announcements, people repeatedly bumping into me at the airport, and the rapid pressure changes, all the unpredictability that goes along with flying on an airplane. And you'd think that would be enough to send me into a meltdown, right? Well, the experience I want to share with you now happened a couple years ago. And I hope that through this story, it'll teach you as much as it taught me. On that day in particular, several years ago, as I mentioned, I had to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to get to the airport so I could fly to New York State to give a presentation that night from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. Very long day. The landing into the regional airport that I came into was over some hills. So it was turbulent beyond all belief. The plane was pitching and turning. I thought we were going to do a flip. I was hanging on to that seat for dear life. I was pressing my head against the seat in front of me, kind of praying quietly to myself. And it wasn't until we landed that I learned that was a typical descent into that airport. Personal note, never fly into that airport again. And I haven't since. I gripped onto that seat so tight that I almost had to peel my fingers off. It was that tight. Fortunately, the rest of the day went pretty smoothly. I did an awesome presentation. I got some wonderful feedback, had a great dinner, and then I got back to my hotel around 10:30 at night. Trashed by that point, you can imagine. So that was a 15-hour day. And I think I really only had an hour of downtime in the middle. And it wasn't even restful. It was to get to my hotel, unpack everything, and get picked up to go and meet with the person that was hosting me. So after all that, I woke up the next morning still feeling pretty trashed, very worn out. All I could think about was getting back home to my family. The flight out of the airport, a little bumpy, but thank goodness it was much better than the flight in. Well, I had a layover in Philadelphia for a couple hours before heading home to Chicago. And I didn't realize how overloaded and fragile I'd become because I was just so focused on getting through it. But then the following happened. After sitting in the airport for over 2 hours, it was 20 minutes before my connecting flight was supposed to start boarding. Well, I heard this wonderful echoing announcement over the loudspeakers that the flight had been canceled because there were problems with the plane and they did not have another plane to replace it. So I took up my itinerary, I called the 800 number, that my client had used to book the flight for me. And a woman answered the phone, and she was very cold. She was very monotone. She was clearly following a script to tell me all about how she couldn't help me. And she suggested that I just go to the customer service desk and book a new flight, blah, blah, blah. So, by the time I had located the customer service desk, it was jam-packed with all of the other people on my flight that had been kicked off. There were about 100 of them or so. So, as I looked at this 100-people-deep line, listening to the echoes around me, getting increasingly overwhelmed, I began shaking in the place I was standing. My eyes began to tear up. Everything seemed to get louder. Everything seemed to get tighter. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't know what to do. I was starting to shut down. I was losing the ability to speak. I was getting overwhelmed. I knew that a meltdown was coming. So I did the one thing. Fortunately, this one thing I thought of to do that I encourage every other person with similar challenges to do. I called for help. Who did I call? My darling wife, Kathy. I explained to her in my very shaky voice what was happening, how much difficulty I was having thinking and speaking. So my darling wife, who is a greater gift to me every single day, and I never let her forget this, she remained very calm, and she guided me step by step in what to do. She told me to look for one of the people in uniform for the airline that transports people around the airport. You know, they have those trams that they can help people have difficulty walking or have a lot of baggage. So I looked around, I found that person. I told Kathy I found the person, and she says, walk toward them. You know, I was so debilitated at this point, it didn't even occur to me to do that. So thank goodness Kathy knew I needed step-by-step support and instruction. So when I did walk over to this lady, she looked at me and said, can I help you? And I think I said something along these lines. I have autism, and they canceled my flight, and they said they don't have any more flights, and I need to get home today. So the woman that I talked to, her name was Sean, and she had a delightful southern accent. And she gently took my bags and told me to sit down in her tram car, because I imagine she could hear the trembling in my voice. I imagine my body was shaking. And she could see how stressed I was. So after I sat down, she took my itinerary, she asked me a few questions, and she said she knew somebody that could help. So she proceeded to drive me to another gate somewhere in the terminal that was not being used. It was quiet, it was dark, it was away from all the melee. That alone helped tremendously. So I sat there hunched over in her tram car. Kathy continued to talk to me to keep me calm. And Sean asked me if I needed anything before she left to go and get some help. Fortunately, I was okay. I was just glad to be out of that craziness. So Kathy kept talking to me. What seemed like an eternity, my guess is it was really only 10 or 15 minutes. But soon, Sean came back with another gentleman. This gentleman handed her a boarding pass with my name on it, and it was for a flight that would be leaving an hour and a half later than my original flight was supposed to. And this is when I was told there were no flights available till tomorrow. But here's what I found out. Sean really advocated for me because she wanted to do right by one of her customers. So she went to her supervisor. Her supervisor, whose name is Dale, went into the system and got me a boarding pass for a flight that was already overbooked. And I'll just share this with you because it's a bit of a humorous note. I thanked Sean profusely for helping me, and she shared with me that there was one summer where she was a camp counselor, and she dealt with a couple kids on the autism spectrum. So once I told her autism and she saw how I was feeling, she knew what could potentially come, and she said, in her wonderful little southern accent, last thing I want is to see a grown man pitch a fit in the middle of the airport. So I can understand that. For whatever reason, she knew she needed to act, and thank goodness Dale had her back. So when I finally arrived home after that very long day, I just collapsed into my own bed with a big sigh of relief, so happy to be home. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is in order to convey one very simple truth to my fellow human beings with special needs, and everybody else for that matter. And I hope this is a lesson you never, ever forget. Ready? The lesson is that there is absolutely no value in going through your life stubbornly refusing to ask for help from others. I was seconds away from a full-blown meltdown at the airport, so I called my wife Kathy, who helped me find Sean. Sean led me to Dale, who helped Sean help me. I, to this day, am grateful and humbled to my core by how generously and tenderly I was taken care of that day by my wife and two complete strangers. I can't emphasize enough how absolutely necessary it is to have other people in your life to support you during those vulnerable moments. Because somebody with special needs, you know it's going to happen. And we are born and bred and raised in a community of people that there's no reason to not reach out to, because we're all in this together. We all need each other's help at some point. And needing people is not a sign of weakness, so get that pile of garbage out from between your ears right now. It never was, and it never will be, weakness, cowardice, anything else. It is, first and foremost, a precious gift of service that human beings give to each other. I'm so grateful for the people that helped me that day, so much that I tell this story all the time. So I decided to tell it again for you today. I hope my sharing this has helped you. And I hope this episode has helped you. And if it has, please share it so other people can benefit from this story too. And please take some time to visit either iTunes or YouTube and leave a comment about how this lesson in this podcast series has helped you. And feel free to leave a review on my website as well. I'd love to hear from you. And be sure to join me next time for another episode. In the meantime, thanks for being you.